Life Audio.
Welcome to the TMOS podcast, where we share how grace, commitment, and cooperation can help couples live the everyday moments of marriage together.
Hi, everyone. We're Ted and Ashley Slater. Did you know that you and your spouse are a couple of influence? It's true. Even if you don't have a platform, television show, or a large online following, you are daily influencing, for better or for worse, how those around you think about marriage. Today, we share 3 ways you can use your influence for good. There are at least 2 things that we disagree on.
At least. Okay, let's talk about these 2.
Okay, the first one is cannolis.
See, cannolis are mentioned in, like, The Godfather, right? So they're like a manly thing, like quiche. But I'm like, it's just so boring. You got, like, this macaroni noodle stuffed with whipped cream, and there's no, it's just a crunch and a poof.
Okay,
I don't get it.
Have you had a cannoli?
Yeah, aren't they like the shape of a rigatoni or something?
Like
if you took your shoe off and ripped the sole off and rolled it into like a tube, and then and took some whipped cream in a can and shoved it in there.
Okay, they're more shaped like manicotti pasta shells, and they're stuffed with like a ricotta kind of. I think it's a
mascarpone. Ricotta?
No, I think it's ricotta
Is it
type.
savory or sweet?
It's kind of both. I say it's more sweet. Anyway.
Yeah.
So the girls and I went to a cannoli bar in the Phoenix area.
Oh, you didn't invite me?
Today. No, I did invite you. No, actually, no, wait. Actually, I did not invite you because...
You knew the answer.
I told you we were going to go, and you said thank you for not inviting me. So here's the thing.
Yes.
I had a very good cannoli at the Renaissance Festival.
Yeah, that's what Dorothy was telling me.
But I think you got in my head before I went today.
No.
Because all I could think about while I was eating this cannoli was that it had a crunchy shell, which was a pastry shell with a soft filling.
Oh, no.
And so I think I built my expectations up, and so I was a little disappointed. So, and here's the thing. I wasn't sure that I really loved cannolis till I had the one at the Renaissance Festival, and it was so good.
Oh, no.
So now, once again, I'm not sure if I like cannolis. So we may not disagree completely.
Did I influence you for bad then? Did I plant a demon seed?
Maybe. I mean, it was kind of a weird experience anyway, not because of the place. The place was cool.
Oh, it's we've been there for dinner.
We've been to the restaurant that's attached, but there must have been some sort of tree nut in one of the kind of filling that the girls sampled.
Yeah.
So 2 of the girls that have tree nut allergies were like, my throat feels a little funny. I don't think I'm going to eat mine.
Oh, man, too?
Yeah, but we got
So it wasn't magical.
It was not magical.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We had coffee and we sat outside and we talked. It was fun. Good. But I think I built up this experience in my head.
So maybe we don't disagree so much with cannolis anymore.
I think you're a little hard on them.
Oh, I despise them.
Yeah, but have you had one?
I'd rather eat a locust.
I will say these shells were extra crunchy. There is a little bakery in town that makes cannolis, and I think their shells are less crunchy. Okay. I think I like them better.
That would have driven me crazy. All this crunching and snapping and crackling.
That's true. Okay.
Chewing. Yeah.
So cannolis.
Cannolis is one of our
areas,
disagreements.
Yes. Maybe less than it was before today.
Okay.
Maybe I'd be like, let's get tiramisu instead.
And the second thing that we disagree on is when there are only 2 things we disagree on.
Well, no, 2 things that came to mind for this episode. Right. Because we don't have to agree on everything to be happily married.
Agree to disagree.
Okay. Case in point. All right. Number 2, influencers. You have a very strong opinion of influencers.
I'm pretty cynical. If I'm like watching a video on Facebook or something and there's an influencer pushing a product, I'm like, you know what? You're getting paid to do this. I am specifically not going to purchase this product because it's just so phony. It's all phony. I know that the people that are pushing products on, big TV, whether it's for a bank or a shoe, I know they're getting paid too. But influencers, I don't know. I just feel like they're little people that think they're big people and they're not. They're nobodies.
How do you really
That's
feel?
really cool.
See, I have a different opinion of influencers.
Yeah.
Because sometimes influencers, if I can talk today, are people I have followed online for years. And as their influence has grown, maybe places have reached out to them and now they're getting to promote things that they did like and they did use. Like, I have an author friend who loves the Dwell Bible app, which I also love.
Mm-hmm.
And she started promoting that. And it wasn't because she just wanted to make a commission or whatever they offer for, selling subscriptions. It's because she legitimately loved the product. So I really feel like when it comes to influencers, you look at the person and their history and their character, and then you decide whether you're going to trust what they're sharing about.
Okay, if it's somebody that you've built a kind of relationship with, that's a little different because maybe there's a little bit of trust built up. But my default is somebody who claims to be an influencer. I'm like, yeah, well, influence this.
Which is kind of, okay, this is kind of hilarious that we are on these opposite ends of opinion when it comes to influencers, because in normal life, if I come home and I'm like, oh, I had this interaction with this person and I felt this way and yada, yada, you'll be like, you should just believe the best about them.
And I say it with that tone too.
You do. And sometimes it's at the, I'm like, but what about my feelings? So it's kind of funny that in this respect, you're like, I'm believing the worst about influencers. And you know what I mean?
I don't know. That's because I don't know who they are other than I'm an influencer.
Right.
Trust me.
Yeah.
It's like, you're not going to influence me because I don't know you.
So it's a vetting process with influencers.
Okay.
Anyway, we don't need to keep talking about it. Actually applies to what we're talking about today.
Yes.
Because the thing is, we are all influencers. And if we're married, we're all couples of influence. So after this break, we'll talk about why. Okay. So when I say like couple of influence, who comes to mind?
Well, I mean, Jennifer Rothschild, right?
Yeah.
You did some work with her, or Kirk Cameron, done some work with him.
Them and their spouses.
And their spouses, right? We've got some friends, that we've talked about before, that we've interviewed on the podcast that are influencers. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the big one I think of is like Chip and Joanna Gaines.
Oh, sure.
I mean, they have a huge platform.
True.
They have lots of influence and they do it together as a couple. So obviously it's influencing what people think about marriage and couples being able to work together. Or think of like the royal couples. I mean, I think that's one people would be like, ooh, Prince William and Princess Kate, or, all of these people.
Is that their names?
Yeah, Prince William and with Kate Middleton. But I guess she's Princess Kate.
Princess.
Yeah. I mean, both of those people are, and some of the people that you talked about, they're public couples who influence or affect what others believe or perceive about marriage. I even think about like our lead pastor and his wife. I mean, they influence what people in the church think of marriage. And I love that they're very real. They don't try to hide the struggles.
Right. That's a good point.
So, and I think it's easy for all of us to agree that couples in the public eye have influence because they have a platform and they have followers or fans. But the truth is that every couple is a couple of influence. We don't need to have a large platform, droves of social media followers, or do paid sponsorships to influence others. All of us who are married are daily influencing, for better or worse, how those around us think about marriage.
Yeah, I could see that. Like with our kids, of course, what we do and say influences them, informs their opinions about marriage and stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, we've all heard that saying that actions speak louder than words, right?
Yeah, although if I yell, it's louder than clapping.
That's true.
So words can be louder than...
Yeah, but this is like metaphorically speaking.
I took you literally. I'm so sorry.
I mean, it was a French-German theologian and philosopher, Albert Schweitzer, I think is how you say his last name, once wrote, example is not the main thing influencing others. It's the only thing.
Okay, the way you live something out.
Right. I mean, I think our words matter. Our words have power. But if we don't back those
it up,
words,
follow up with actions.
Right. Then they do more harm, I think, than good.
It's hypocrisy. It sort of encourages, it models hypocrisy. If you say something and do something else, what a way to live. It's living a lie.
Right. Yet I wonder how many of us who are just going about and living our daily lives, how many of us stop to seriously consider what our interactions with our spouses, with each other, actually communicate to others about marriage. For example, as couples, we could ask ourselves these questions. When my spouse and I are at a store or restaurant, what does the way we treat each other say about marriage? As we navigate hectic Sunday mornings at church or school pickup and drop off, how do our actions and words represent what it's like to really be married? In those moments when others silently observe us, such as our kids, singles, or dating and engaged couples, are they inspired to view marriage as something desirable?
I would hope so. We're not phony in the way we act in public, putting on a happier face than not pretending that there aren't challenges. But we do show that there are joys and little flirtations and aggressive flirtation. And so,
if you've seen the Spy Family movie, you know that the aggressive flirtations is from.
So hilarious. Anyway.
Yeah. And I think we've had our successes and our failures.
Absolutely.
In representing marriage well when we are out and about. Like a story that comes to mind when we actually weren't together, but I think was an opportunity for you to be a positive influence when it comes to marriage is when, I think it was when Olivia was born and I was in the hospital.
Oh, right.
You went across the street to, was it Taco Bell?
Yeah, to get some taco or something.
Or nachos or something. Oh, now nachos sound good.
Ooh.
Anyway, do you remember what happened? Do you want to tell that story?
So one of the employees was getting married and he was excited. And then somebody else was like, oh, ball and chain. You're setting yourself up for misery.
Yeah, I feel like you told me there were other things that the people around him said. And so you took the opportunity, and this was an opportunity where you did use your words for influence, not necessarily your actions. But didn't you tell him something like, I love being married. We just had our first baby or something like that. And so you took the opportunity where all these voices were saying, ooh, marriage is a bad thing. You're going to lose your freedom. It's going to inhibit you to say.
I think they were trying to joke, but it was harsh. It wasn't uplifting. It was discouraging.
Well, and I don't think, negative jokes about marriage aren't helpful, are they? They reveal and communicate a cynicism about it. But sometimes we've also had things that I look back and I cringe. Like when we went to the Grand Canyon a couple years ago, we had at least 2 public fights. It was not a good.
I have no idea. I don't recall.
Which actually, I don't think we've ever had public fights before that.
Yeah.
Like just public disagreements, not like fights.
Punches.
Like
blows were exchanged.
Vocal disagreements and me maybe just walking away.
Public myth.
Yeah. And I think we both, I look back and go, man. But the good news is that God's mercies are new every morning.
There you go.
As Lamentations 3:22-23 says. So even when we have those moments where maybe we are being a couple of influence and our influence is not positive, or we forget that people are watching us, each day offers us a fresh start and a new opportunity to do better in how we interact with each other. We did have on our cruise that we went on like a year ago. We had someone ask us if we were newlyweds because of the way we were interacting. Great. To which you said, yes, 20 years.
We're just in the beginning of this.
Yeah. So after this break, we'll share 3 suggestions for how you can be a positive couple of influence. So what are some ways we can work to be a positive couple of influence? I have 3 suggestions, and you can add some if you come up with any along the way. One, you kind of touched on already, which is be real. Don't put on an act or fake a perfect relationship because others will see through it. Instead, be real and be yourselves.
Yeah, don't know what to add to that.
Well, and if real means say that those listening that you're struggling in your marriage right now, consider how you can be authentic yet hopeful in your behavior.
Because, you don't want to get cynical. It's easy to get cynical. I mean, if you are in a truly miserable marriage where your spouse ignores you or is abusive or insulting or...
Those are all things that you probably need to see a counselor.
Yeah.
You need to, I mean, if they're abusive, you get help.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're not...
Make space.
We're not qualified to speak on that.
But for the average, typical couple like us.
Yeah. And I mean, I think when you're real, that example can encourage others who also may be in a difficult season. It can communicate that marriage is worth fighting for.
That's a good point. Right. Huh.
Like, I remember, I think you'll remember it once I start giving details.
Okay.
Maybe a decade ago when we went through.
I think it was 10 years ago.
Yeah. I've heard it both ways. We're kind of going through a rough time in life and marriage. It was do you remember when our black Dodge Neon overheated itself to death on the freeway? Off ramp? It was like 2 hours from home, and it was me and one of the daughters.
Oh, right.
And so I'm frantically calling you. I think I hung up on you once in frustration. We had to get a tow truck and then a $60 taxi ride and a rental car. And it wasn't something where I could just come home because I was going to do an interview.
Oh, you're on your way to an interview.
I was on my way to an interview in South Carolina from Georgia. So it wasn't like I could just say, come pick me up and take me home. It was crazy. I think, by the end of that day, I was just physically, mentally, and emotionally beat. And then 2 days later, when we returned the rental car, we were overcharged. And one of the managers tried to pit us against each other as we tried to resolve the billing issue. So that was exhausting. And then...
But wait, there's more.
Right. But wait, it took like 2 weeks for the shop to even diagnose our car's problem. And once they did, the bill, it was a big bill.
Yeah.
And then we made the 2-hour trek to go pick it up. And 20 minutes after leaving, we discovered the problem still existed and had to have it towed back to the shop again.
Oh, my land.
Yeah. So we then drove 2 hours home with one less car than we anticipated. And then I think it was like, after all that, we ended up all getting a stomach virus. You had blood pressure. I mean, you've always had high blood pressure, but I think that was the time when your blood pressure just kind of skyrocketed. It was out of control,
right. It was up there in stroke level.
Yeah. And then I had like slightly abnormal moles that had to be removed. Yeah,
that was a good month.
Or a couple months. It was really stressful, and I think it took a strain on our relationship. But I don't think we lost hope, because that was a time when we're standing in church,
right?
And we're both frustrated with each other. We've not been communicating well, and they're playing some song during worship, and you took a risk and reached across the frustration and took my hand.
Yeah.
And you didn't know if I'd take your hand back or if I'd be like, forget it. This has been a rough month. I don't want to hold your hand. But
I licked my hand before I grabbed yours.
No, I did not.
No, I did not lick my hand.
That's why it was wet. No, I'm kidding. But, we went against our feelings of hurt and irritation and disconnectedness and held hands, and we were I think I wrote a whole article or two on that. So we were very open about, we were going through a hard time, but we're not without hope, and our relationship is worth fighting for.
Yeah, that's a good example.
And that's not like, I know not everyone is comfortable publicly sharing the hard stuff you're going through. And I do think you have to be careful, because there is a lot of criticism or a lot of unwanted advice when you share stuff you're going through.
Right, like Job's friends.
Right. So you don't have to, if you're not in a place where, like us, you're comfortable about writing, sharing that kind of detail, just be real with the people that you know well, that you trust, Okay. So number two. Choose grace.
What do you mean by that?
Well, let's face it. We all annoy each other at times, at the store, at restaurants, church. When I'm like crunching Pirate's Booty at home, which I would like to say you crunch it just as loud as I do. It's just that I don't have sensitive ears.
Different ears.
Different ears. But when we determine to respond with less annoyance and more grace or kindness, we actively live out Ephesians 4:2. And in that, Paul says, always be humble and gentle, be patient with each other, making allowance for each other's faults because of your love. And I think it's countercultural too. I mean, we go to the grocery store and we see the wife who's annoyed with the husband or the husband who's making jokes at the expense of his wife. So when we're giving each other grace and being kind to each other in situations where we see other couples bickering, it's going to stand out in a positive way to those around us, right?
Yeah. The last phrase in that verse you quoted, making allowance for each other's faults because of your love.
Yeah.
It's like, I know you're wrong, but because I love you, I'm going to make an allowance for it here. I'm going to allow it.
Yeah, it's kind of that's the NLT, kind of a funny way of phrasing it. I actually saw a comment thread on Facebook recently focused on how we need to stop telling each other to give ourselves grace and instead start making war with our sin. And
okay, sure.
Yeah. And I mean, that reminded me.
Or both and.
Right. That reminded me of what I wanted to clarify in what we are not saying when we encourage listeners to give their spouse grace. We are not saying to make room and excuses for habitual sin, either in your own life or your spouse's life. But that said, we're all going to mess up at times. We aren't going to get it perfectly. And Scripture says in Romans 2:4 that it's the kindness of God that leads us to repentance. And I think there's something to practicing grace or undeserved kindness in marriage that also results in both spouses if we're both actively following Jesus and, yes, warring against our own sin, that also helps us lead each other to repentance if we have messed up. Does that make sense?
It does. Sorry, I wish I could add something, but I think you summarized it pretty well there.
You're a man of few words today.
I can be more. More words.
Okay, 3.
Yes.
Laugh together. And we have talked before about how laughing together is helpful in all seasons. But, I mean, have you ever been around a couple that laughs together a lot?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm thinking of
Because I think we've both found that we're inspired by how much they enjoy each other's company. Because laughter not only creates a joyful environment, but I think it unites spouses. And the more we feel united, the more positive our display of marriage will be. Others will take note.
Right. Should I take this opportunity to invite people to read my thesis?
Sure.
I wrote my master's thesis on laughter. So if you can find it online somewhere.
Just search Ted Slater or Theodore Slater?
Yeah, probably Theodore Slater laughter or something like that.
Yeah. What was the name of it?
The thesis?
Yeah.
It had 2 names. One was like highfalutin, like the salience of laughter, the salience of like glory and freedom or something like that, and the relation to laughter in Scripture, something like that. It was
okay.
I used the word salience.
Yeah, what does that mean?
I don't know. It was just a cool grad school level kind of word. Relevance, importance.
Oh, okay.
Saltiness.
So instead of just saying relevance.
Yeah, no, I had to use a grad school word.
You had to be a little more poetic.
Very scholarly.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, laughter is a cool thing.
Yeah.
I think it points people toward freedom that God gives us.
Yeah. Anyway, I'll see if I can find a link to your master's thesis and put it in the show notes.
I made a whole website on it.
Okay, I'm sure you can point me to it, and then I will point listeners to it. Okay, so the next time, Ted, you and I interact, or those of you listening interact with your spouse, remember that others may be observing and taking cues from you on what to believe about marriage. It's your opportunity to let your actions speak louder than words and communicate to them that marriage is indeed a good thing. So to recap, you are a couple of influence. Here are 3 things you can do to positively, that was hard to say for some reason,
positively
impact how those around you view marriage. 1, be real. So be genuine but hopeful. Choose grace and laugh together. And we'll be right back, and we will give this week's Us Time Challenge. All right, for this week's Us Time Challenge. Maybe I need to slow down.
Let's say that 5 times fast.
Right. Think about a couple you know who influences you to see marriage in a positive light. What is it about what they say, do, and how they live? And how can you practice some of the same things in your marriage?
That's good. Are we going to do that?
We should.
Maybe each of us will pick a couple.
Okay.
And then we'll go on like a date night or something, and we'll do some gossiping. Good gossip.
Maybe we'll share some of our conclusions in
sandwiches,
a blog or Instagram post or something.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for joining us on the Team Us podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the podcast, and we'd love to have you leave a review over at Apple Podcast. Reviews help more people discover this podcast and hopefully be encouraged in their marriages. We're looking forward to next time as we keep talking about how grace, commitment, and cooperation can help couples live the everyday moments of marriage together.
Team Us with Ted and Ashley Slater is a production of Life Audio and Salem Media. If you liked what you heard today, please take a second to rate and review the podcast in your favorite podcast app so that more listeners like you can find the show. For more faith-filled, inspirational podcasts, visit us at lifeaudio.com.